Welcome to the Her Podcast with Kristin Sampson, offering a message of hope, encouragement, and reflection with special guests.
Hey, this is Kristin, and we're doing another episode on being enough. It's like this is a really big deal for women, and uh, so many of us go through this feeling of not being enough. And so, I just want to do like a recap of some of the interviews and talks that we've done with our guests over this topic. Some things that have really stood out with me over the last 4 weeks, especially after doing. Uh, the interviews with these ladies and getting their perspective in the different areas of how women can struggle with feeling like they're enough and how do we overcome that as women together. So with Lori, one of the things that really stood out with me with visiting with her on being enough is that she points out that we are not enough without God, and how he sent his gift, a special gift, his son, and grace to help us to be enough, because without that, we wouldn't be. And then she also, another thing she pointed out that I thought was really good was comparing ourselves, because it is so easy for us as women to constantly compare ourselves with other moms, with other ladies, with other job situations. I mean, just it's like a constant thing for us. And she said that when you compare yourself to others, it will only result in one of two things: pride or discouragement. You compare yourself and say, I'm better than that, or I'm not as good. So do not compare is even gives you even more empowering for yourself. It empowers you more if you can get to that point where you don't compare, because like she says, you know, you're either going to feel really good about yourself and have a pride that's not healthy, or you're going to be discouraged and think that you're not good enough in the world's eyes. And I thought that was so good. With Tara, what stood out with me the most that keeps just, I mean, lots of things did, but the thing that just keeps going back in my mind is the fact that as she was younger, she really looked up to her sister in that feeling of her being enough and her validation. And then when her sister passed, she didn't have that person to help her feel like she was enough. And so to me, that was a reminder of we cannot, as women, rely on other people to help us feel like we're enough, and that be our guideline of their opinion, because they might not always be there. And then they also might change their perspective, their guidelines, there's just so much false hope of enough when we allow ourselves to seek other people's perspective and viewpoints. It's a good encouragement to look to other women and to have those people to encourage us, but not to put all of our eggs in one basket. Don't always look to that one person to make you feel like you're enough. And then we talked to Lee Morgan. Oh my word, she is just amazing. And finding fulfillment with family. And that God has given us a purpose and a plan and a direction. And so with our family, we need to find fulfillment in that. And I know I had struggled with that for so many years. And we talked about that in the podcast. And she talks about how, we come from all different backgrounds, and to find our fulfillment with God through our family. And when we learn that we are put here on earth for a purpose, God has given us a plan. We get to choose different paths, different ways we want to go about things and handle things. But in the end, God will help us and direct us down these paths. We just have to trust in him. We have to rely on him in order to make those good decisions and to feel enough. So, what does it mean for us to see ourselves as God sees us? I feel like that's like a really big, loaded question because God made us. God is everything. He made the blades of grass, He made the trees, He made the wind, like He's made everything, but He's made us in His image, in His image. So, who are we to say that somebody isn't enough? Who are we to say we are not enough? Who are we to say that how He made me is not enough? We are. God made us for a purpose and a reason and gave us what we needed and gave us our tools that we need in order to be enough. We just have to open our eyes, realize our capabilities, and use them. Because the world's going to tell us that we're not enough. And the world's going to tell us we have to earn that right to feel like we're enough. Um, for many, many years, I struggled with this because I had constant people around me that had made me feel like I was not enough, that had made me feel like being a stay at home mom was not enough. Being a wife was not enough. Um, and so on and so on. And I know y'all can fill in the blanks too for you of how people have made you not feel enough, not pretty enough, not smart enough, not kind enough. So many things that the world compares us to and makes us feel like we're not enough. And it's so important for us to get to that point where we don't rely on the world to tell us that we're enough. Um, it gets you in a better frame of mind when you don't allow other people's opinions and thoughts creep in. And when I realized that God has put us here for a purpose and a plan, and that everything else kind of just like went out the window for me, it was when I really truly realized that you're here for a purpose. She's here for a purpose. I'm here for a purpose. In that He has made us the way we are for a reason. Our looks, our speech, um, our talents. I mean, the Bible gives us examples of that we all have been given different talents. We're not all going to be professors. We're not all going to be uh, s- doctors. We're not all going to be great at one-on-one Bible studies. We're not all going to be great at baking and cooking. Like we all have our special talents. We all have our special things that we're going to be good at. And um and if there's a reason for that. And when you realize that, well, I know for me, when I realized that God has given me talents and a purpose. So, like, one of the things I love to do is help people. I absolutely love to help people. I love to serve people. I love to be there for people and listen to people. And not everybody, I realized, has that talent. Some people don't have the patience. Some people don't even think about going and wanting to help somebody. They're thinking of themselves more, or they're thinking of other ways to do something that uses their talent. Doesn't make it right or wrong. We all have different perspectives on how we handle things. And so mine is going and helping people and not getting anything in return. I could care less if I get anything in return. I just want to help people. I want to see people succeed. I want to see people that are sad be happier, or having a hard time have a little bit easier. Like that's what I enjoy. That's what I thrive off of. And when you have that mindset, that change of mindset of one, you're doing this for the Lord, and two, you realize that this is your talent, finding your talent. And that's a whole nother podcast, a whole nother thing. But when you get to that point, you're gonna feel like you're enough with God because this is what God has given you. And so with that together, it helps you to feel more complete. But when you're trying to do things without him and without his purpose and his plans, um, it doesn't go as smooth. And you get down, you get depressed, you get discouraged, you it just causes so many other thoughts and feelings that you just it's easier not to have if you're trying to please the Lord. Um, so like if you have like a bad hair day, don't get down on that. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. If you mess up on something, um, which we all do, way more than probably some of us would like to admit. Um, it's okay. Don't get down to the point to where you can't get back up. I know recently I had messed up pretty big, not anything sinful, but something that was a big deal and just an oversight and totally messed up. But I had to go in front of a group of women, which, we're all of our own worst critics. I had to go in front of a group of women and admit my wrong and to admit what I had done wrong. And that was so hard at first when I first realized I had messed up. And I'm like, you know what? It's not the end of the world. It's okay. I still feel really bad, but I'm not going to let it bring me down to a low that I would have been at many years ago if I had done been through this situation because I'm in a better frame of mind that I know that things are important here on earth, but they don't have to be devastating and they don't have to be that focus, especially if it's not a spiritual matter. And so I apologized. I admitted my wrongs and realized that these women too have messed up in their lives. So it's really on them if they want to judge me harshly. That's they can do that if they want to. I prefer them not, but they can do that if they want to. And same with us. Like it's better not to judge harshly when people do mess up because we're all going to mess up, but for sure own it, take responsibility, deal with it. Um, but again, it doesn't need to bring us down because we're more than that mistake. Those mistakes don't define who we are. And I know that, statistics have shown that you give more compliments. You have to give so many more positive feedback to equal one negative. And I'm dyslexic. It's probably said the other way. So like one negative equals like 7 to 10 positives. And so it's so easy to allow that negative to define in our minds and to think that other people are defining us by that one negative. And it didn't have to be that way. That um, we can get over that. Somebody else is going to mess up, and then that's going to be in the spotlight. That's going to be somebody else's conversation, and we've got to move on, just like other people move on from it as well. And again, don't let it devastate you to the point to where you feel like you can't get out of it because you can. We need to be able to shake it off and remind ourselves that we can learn from those mistakes, we can grow from those mistakes, we can do better with God. And with God, I'm going to get through it and I'm going to be enough. And I'm going to be able to move on and be a better version of me than I was. Because we all have choices. And don't let anybody else define who you are. Don't get wrapped up in all that. Stop, pray, remind yourself that God is waiting. He's waiting to hear from you. He's going to come to you where you are in those moments of hard times and difficult times and struggles of feeling like you're not enough. Call on him to help you through it because he will, because we are not enough without him. So, as a parent, some of you are parents, you'll understand this. So, I was taking my kids to school. And, the hustle and bustle of all that, how those mornings go and you try to make them as calm as possible. And, every kid has their own little quirks about them and their special things. And so we're driving them to school and I get to the school and I realize my kid didn't have his shoes on. I'm like, where are your shoes? because this kid would get in the vehicle and after school and immediately take off their shoes. Did not like wearing shoes. It just was this habit that had formed. And so I just assumed, just like he had assumed, that his shoes were in there. They weren't. And so I'm like, well, I told the teacher, I'm like, well, you take them and then I will go get the shoes and come back because I didn't want him to miss any of his school. And they're like, no, you're going to have to take them with you. And I was like, oh man, now he's going to miss even more school. We're running behind. This is causing us more time to be behind. And he doesn't do well when he's late. Who does? Um, just all the things going through my mind. So I turned off the radio and just trying to talk with him, tell him it's okay, reassuring him. While in the back of my mind, I'm like stressing out. So we go get the shoes, keep hitting that. We go get the shoes and we come back and take him into school and everything's fine. And then I come back out and sit in the car and I just take like this deep breath. And I'm like, okay, it's not the end of the world. But I feel so bad. I feel like I'm so unorganized. I feel like a horrible mother, wondering what in the world are these teachers thinking of me? All the things, all the things. And I kid you not, my radio turns on by itself. No idea how, don't care how, but it did. And this song comes on. And at this time, in this moment, I had never heard this song before. And it was pretty interesting. Here are the words, and I'm sure most of you will know what this song is. I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am because I need to know. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you, I find my worth. In you, I find my identity. Taking all I have, and now I'm laying it at your feet. You have every failure, God. You have every victory. You say I am loved when I cannot feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, you say I am yours. I believe what you say of me. I believe. And I just sat there and I thought, wow, I know the shoe thing is so minor in comparison to other things, but to know that he cares about everything, he cares about how we feel, where we are, what we're doing, he cares. And he doesn't view us as we're not enough when those bad things happen, when we feel depleted, when we feel overtaken by upsetness and grief and disappointment. Like he cares enough to help us get out of that. He cares enough to help encourages us to get to be in a better state of mind. So with me feeling like I'm not a good mom and all those things that go through your mind at that time, I remember after hearing that thinking, you know what? This is so minor. I am enough. This I'm not going to let this moment define me as a mother because I do good things. I'm not perfect, but I do great things. I am a good mom. So what, we forgot the shoes. We're going to do better. I'm going to check and make sure because this is not going to happen again. And so far it has not because it made a big impact. And so instead of me letting it so down and so miserable and giving up, throwing my hands up like I just give up being a mom, I don't care. Instead instead of that, I was like, no, I have to be better. I've got to be a better mom for my kids. I got to be more organized for my kids. I've got to have a checklist of all the things and be better. Do I still struggle with some of that today? Absolutely, because life happens and you have to do like a reset, a recheck of where you are, where your walk is as a wife, as a mother, as a sister, as a friend, as a Christian. Like you just have to have these resets, these moments of Where am I? And how am I measuring up for God? So, along those lines of having to recheck and remeasure where you are emotionally and mentally and spiritually, it's so good to have other people of like mind around you to help you say, hey, you're blowing it out of proportion. Hey, here's my shoulder for you to cry on. Hey, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna get through this. We all need those people in our lives. And so I highly encourage you to have at least one person that you can, one woman you can reach out to and be like, man, I'm really struggling. I've had a bad day. Pray for me. And that woman can encourage you and vice versa. Be that for somebody else, be that for another woman and help them and encourage them. Be vulnerable to each other, open up to each other, because that's going to help you realize that you are enough with God and they're enough with God, and loving each other through those things. I know I've been very blessed to be a part of a couple women's groups now that they pray all the time. Like you can just feel the love and the growth with each other. And when you bear each other's burdens, you develop that close relationship with each other. And it makes you realize that we all need God. We're all going to struggle. We're all going to have bad days, and that we are not enough without Him. But we're going to encourage each other to reach out to Him. We're all going to reach out to Him on behalf of whoever. And it makes a big difference. Um, some other practical tools that we have discussed through some of these podcasts as well is that, prayer. And I feel like we say prayer so loosely and so lightly, but prayer is the most powerful thing you can do because you're talking to the Creator. You're talking to the being that made everything. You're talking to the one that can change things in a blink of an eye. When you pray, you are talking to the one that can make things change. Don't take prayer lightly. Prayer is the best tool you can have. And I know as women, we want an answer back. We want that quick resolve. We want that visual reminder that this is. And sometimes we do get that. Sometimes we do. Sometimes those are pretty fast, but sometimes they are no's and sometimes they're not right now. Sometimes it's hold on, you got to go through a little bit harder times first before you get the outcome you're wanting. But that's when you got to remember during those times, you can't grow unless you go through those hard times. You can't feel like you're enough if you don't go through times where you don't feel like you're enough. You've got to have that balance, which is crazy, but that's just how it works. So when we find ourselves in bad situations, um, write it down too, like journal. Um, it's so cool to be able to like look back and see the things that you've been through. Write down how you have responded to those things, how you dealt with those things, who helped you through those times, what you prayed for. And then later, write, maybe like a comment on the side, how God answered those prayers. How did God help you through those moments? Who did He send in that path to help you through those difficult times? I remember one time many years ago, my husband and I um, he was going to do a lectureship, a gospel meeting, not lectureship, a gospel meeting. And right before we left, we got word that the elders didn't want us to work with them anymore. And I thought, wow, that was totally out of left field. And it got us down, and we weren't allowed to talk about it. And that was so hard. And I'm like, okay, I can't tell my friends. I can't tell anybody because we told them we wouldn't tell anybody. And I just remember feeling so sad and upset. And God sent some very loving, kind men our way to visit us. And one of the gentlemen bought 2 dozen roses, 24 roses, and had an auditorium for me to encourage me. And I thought, oh my word, this, like, I cried. Kayla cried. We were like, God knew what we needed in those moments and in those times and those people in our path to help encourage us. And I'm going to tell you, it was a very obvious godsend because this was nowhere near where these people live. These people don't even live in the same town. And so for these people to all come in that weekend and do the little gestures that they did throughout that weekend, it totally was a God moment without a doubt. And in a time of need. And because he cares, because he's going to be there for us, because we are enough with him. Because I tell you, we didn't feel like we were enough. We felt like we were horrible, um, lost, hopeless, all those things. And then we were reminded, no, we're enough because we're with God. We're enough because we're trying to do God's work. That's what we're called to do. And it just made a big difference. Uh, so writing down, that way you can go back to and look again, like I was saying, back, and because it's almost like a compliment, I feel like, when you read those things and you see that you've done a good job at something. Because those private moments like that, it's okay to remind yourself that you do good things and you can handle things in good situations. And sometimes I feel like there's certain situations that we feel almost like we have to respond a certain way. And if we don't, there's something wrong with us. And I just want to remind you that we all respond to things differently. Sometimes it looks similar, but we're all different. He made us all different. We respond differently, and it's okay. There's no right or wrong way always to respond to something. And don't let other people validate who you are. Again, do not let other people validate who you are. You be you within the boundaries of what God has called you to be. And again, we talked about don't compare yourself, don't let others determine your self worth, and have constant communication with God, owning your mistakes, but not allowing them to overtake you and determine who you are. Allow your walk with God to be a beacon of light to this dark world. Share your story and your journey with younger women to help them overcome. Because the more you share your stories of not feeling like you're enough, will help other people to realize that there isn't perfect people. We're not always going to measure up to the world, more than likely, not at all. But that we're measuring up to a different standard, and to encourage young women to do not measure yourself by the world standards, but by God's standards, by His word. Um, because we're enough with God. Um, so I just want to kind of like summarize all this to say that it is hard being a woman. It is hard being a wife, a mother, a sister, a niece. You fill in the blank. Like, it's so hard. But if you can get to the point to where you have more days than not that you're enough because God has you here. You're enough because God made you just the way you are. If you can get to that point to when things happen in your life and people say things or do things that upset you, because you're going to be human still. But just remember, we're living in an imperfect world with imperfect people. And things are going to sting, but don't let them devastate you. Let it sting. Cry a little bit, but don't let it bring you down to where you feel like you can't get back up, because God's there and He cares and He wants you to get back up and He wants you to thrive and strive to be better, and know that you're not ever going to be perfect. And God is not calling you to be perfect. He's calling you to use your talents that He's given you. He's called to be the best version of you not the best version of anybody else, but the best version of you. And just do that. Just focus on that. Just focus on being the best version of you. Pray, read your Bible, and study so you know how He measures and use that as your standard. So I hope you find hope in God and in those little moments, good and bad. Find the positive in those moments and remember that you're enough. Encourage others by being a beacon of light in this world and through all these dark storms that people go through and that we go through. Be a beacon of light. Show them that we as women are strong enough to overcome these things. And it's okay to put your faith in God through these things because that's how we're going to be enough. That's how we're going to get through these things. And then sit back and reflect on your relationship with God. Reflect on where your walk is with Him. How are you doing with your prayer life? How are you doing with studying your Bible? How are you doing with allowing Him to handle your defeats? How are you doing with handing over once you pray? Handing those things over truly to Him and letting Him take control and you working on something else. Reflect on that. Remember, you are not enough without God. And with God, you're enough.